757. We're joined by Taylor Huckaby, Governor Bobby Jindal's former news media director. He's now working as a spokesperson and communications officer in San Francisco for the Bay Area Rapid Transit District. He is a native of Dallas who went to Louisiana State University, and he wrote a guest column that has gained a lot of attention. It appeared in last Sunday's Baton Rouge, New Orleans Advocate. And Taylor Huckaby, it's good to hear your voice. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I think your backstory is interesting. Before we get to the focus of the op-ed piece, you chose LSU despite being a Texan. How did you end up in Tigertown?
Well, I originally was planning on going to Baylor University like both of my parents had done. That's where they met. But I heard from LSU's Manship School of Mass Communication at pretty much the last minute, and they flew Dean Kirpius out, and he made such a great case for LSU, I decided I had to go down and see it. And as soon as I stepped foot on campus, I looked at my parents and I said, this is where I need to be, and so cancel my deposit at Baylor. This is where I'm going.
So you ended up graduating from LSU, and when did you become part of the Jindal political apparatus?
Well, it feels a little oddly serendipitous whenever I recount the story. Whenever I came down to visit LSU, I drove, and we passed Governor Jindal's bus, his tour bus, his campaign bus, on the highway on 49 back in 2007. And once I was on campus, I got involved in a church there called Chapel on the Campus, which was had sort of a cross-section of Louisiana state government, everybody from Mike Edmondson to then Congressman, now Senator Bill Cassidy. And a lot of the inner circle of the Jindal administration went there, and I ended up watching the governor's kids after school every day because I was introduced to Chief of Staff Timmy Teeple. It was me and another girl named Emily, who was also a Dallas native. Every day after class in the first semester of 2008, we'd wrap up our classes and we would head over to the governor's mansion and watch the kids, and then sometimes have dinner with the governor and his wife Supriya. And so that was sort of my introduction to it. And at the time, Timmy Teeple's brother-in-law was the executive director of the state Republican Party, and I got an internship there, and then they made me deputy communications director there. And then from there I became new media director in 2010 and was on the books till 2012.
So you advanced to high places very early, and based on the quality of your writing, obviously you have great talent. But the governor, I'm sure, I'm not sure, but I suspect he was not aware that you were gay.
No, and I mean that's the thing that I've said before about Governor Jindal is I've worked for a lot of candidates, a lot of politicians in my time, young as I may be, and he's the most cloistered candidate that I've ever worked for. If you wanted something from Governor Jindal, you had to go through the chief of staff. Nobody got to meet the governor, and that's whenever you ask legislators, and they'll tell you the same story. He's a very difficult man to get any face time with.
So did you have close interaction with him?
Aside from that first semester where we had sort of casual dinners together, I didn't ever have close contact, but that was the rule. Nobody did. We all went through Timmy Teeple.
Why do you think that's the case?
I am not 100% sure. I mean, there was a lot of paranoia about polls and where everything was going whenever I was in the governor's mansion, just sort of as a fly on the wall early on. But I'm not 100% sure why there's such a need for secrecy from both legislators, from his own staffers. He's surrounded by a very small core group of people that act as very powerful gatekeepers.
We're visiting with Taylor Huckaby, and I'm going to read the first few paragraphs of his op-ed piece, and then we'll hear from him about his experience with Bobby Jindal as a gay man. And, of course, at that time, the Jindal insiders probably had no idea that Taylor is gay. He writes, 5 years ago, I was squeezing through Governor Bobby Jindal's office window on the fourth floor of the Louisiana Capitol building. The Louisiana Senate Chamber's roof provides the closest thing to box seating for downtown Baton Rouge events, and as such, the governor, his family, various staff members, and I had taken the opportunity to sneak out and watch the fireworks display over the Mississippi River. It was a rare, intimate moment with Jindal. By then, infamous for his inaccessibility, and as I watched the sky light up, I wondered if he knew my secret. To the best of my knowledge, I'm the only openly gay person who's ever worked for either Jindal or the Republican Party of Louisiana. When they first hired me 7 years ago, no one knew. We'll talk about it with Taylor Huckaby when we return in 2 minutes on the Louisiana Radio Network. This is Jim Inkster. Thank you for joining us. We're joined by Taylor Huckaby, Governor Bobby Jindal's former news media director. He's written an op-ed piece in the Advocate of Baton Rouge in New Orleans, and he acknowledges that when he was working for Governor Jindal, he was gay, or is gay, and that apparently nobody knew it, and as you can imagine, Governor Jindal's stands may have made him feel a bit uncomfortable. So let's start there, Taylor. The governor, as you say, his religious fervor lies at the bottom of a cauldron deep within a volatile brew of equal parts religion and politics. How were you able to square working for the governor and being a gay person who obviously would not be in line with the governor on that particular issue and all the issues surrounding gays in America today?
Well, I would tell you that the path to authenticity is neither quick nor easy. And as a 19-year-old, whenever I was first working for Governor Jindal in the mansion, and as a 21-year-old later on, whenever I was hired as a new media director, I was in the process of coming out and what that looked like. I grew up in an extremely religious, conservative household, and as such, whenever I went off to college, I gravitated naturally towards those same people. And so it took some time and exposure to new ideas and arguments before I really started to move away from not only Governor Jindal but the Republican Party as well. But I have always been gay, and as it turns out, one of the first people that the first people that I told at work was right around the time I was about to be hired as new media director was Timmy People. I came out in their kitchen with his wife Sarah, and we had sandwiches and talked about it and everything. But as any gay man will tell you in the South, it's sort of like you become their pet project. Like you're sick and they've got the cure and they're gonna figure it out for you. But there were definitely elements within the campaign though that also knew towards the end and that were very unfriendly. But that's it was a very difficult thing, and because Timmy knew I wasn't really required to write anything that was particularly stridently anti-gay. At that point in time, there was enough other issues, from teachers' unions to the perennial budget fiasco that Governor Jindal has forced Louisiana through, that we had other things to write about other than anti-gay things. This is kind of a recent development for Governor Jindal. Since I came out, they sort of were like, well, there's no gay staffers, so we can say whatever we want now. So
you said, and I think I heard you right, that they tried to cure you? What did they do?
Oh, that was the chapel on the campus that we all went to. Whenever I was very, very involved there, and I spent hours and hours, upwards of 20 hours a week there leading. I helped lead worship and play the piano, and I sang on the worship team with Sarah Teeple. And whenever I came out, I was told I immediately had to step down from all of my leadership roles, and I had the option of going into reparative therapy, or I could, pretty much remain a pariah. And so I said thanks but no thanks and left. And so that was a very dark, very depressing time in my life, because many of my friends were very religious at that time, and after I came out, I lost a great many of them. But it also afforded an opportunity for me to sort of remake myself and figure out who I really was. And honestly, I really credit. I know when you've had Bob Mann on the program before. He was my professor at the Manship School. I really could not have made it through without the fantastic faculty and staff of the Manship School, MassCom at LSU. Really fantastic people.
877-217-5757 for Taylor Huckaby, Governor Jindal's former news media director. Dan in Baton Rouge. Good afternoon, Dan.
Good afternoon. Mr. Huckaby, was Governor Jindal's hypocrisy and secrecy regarding internal emails because they would reveal that most of his decisions were focused on how it would play with Grover Norquist, the Koch brothers, Iowa primary voters, rather than what was best for Louisiana.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, one of the biggest influencing things that happened to me while I was working there was during the cigarette tax renewal. They were saying that this is the first time they did this, when they said that it was not a renewal, it was a new tax, and so they weren't going to do it. And I was in a meeting wherever I was protesting this and saying this isn't what's best for Louisiana, but they shut me down and told me that what's best for Louisiana was electing more Republicans. So that's kind of where that decision went.
877-217-5757. Taylor Huckaby, former staffer for Bobby Jindal, a high-ranking one. He was the news media director, worked directly for Timmy Teeple. Are you still in contact with him at all?
We text every once in a while. Whenever the Supreme Court decision came out, I did one of those Facebook overlays of the rainbow with Bobby Jindal's face, and I sent that to him as a playful gesture, and he said, ha, 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 back. So we do have some contact, and he has told me that if I'm ever in Baton Rouge, I'm welcome in his home. So it's not completely sour milk.
Craig in Baton Rouge. Craig, good afternoon.
I heard you talk about the road to authenticity and how you finally came out. I was just wondering, was there a tipping point or something where you got up one day and said, I can do it now, or I've got the courage to do it? And what made you take that giant step?
Well, in the culture that I grew up in, there was a lot of emphasis on reparative therapy, Exodus International, a lot of those different organizations like that. And I, went to a lot of different counselors, and the last one that I saw was in Baton Rouge. And I went in, and I told him that I was depressed and sad and everything. And this is right after I had come out and everything. And he said, you know what your problem is? And I said, what? And he goes, your problem is that you're gay and that you're trying to please your parents and you're trying to please your work, and that's never going to happen. So you need to make a decision right now whether you're going to be happy for yourself or you're going to be happy for them. And I don't want to see you in my office anymore until you figure that out. And that was kind of the moment where I was like, you know what? He's absolutely right. So I picked up and moved on and quit feeling sorry for myself and changed my political affiliation eventually. And so that was sort of the seminal moment.
All right, we'll return with Taylor Huckaby after this pause on the Louisiana Radio Network. This is Jim Inkster. Thank you for joining us. 877-217-5757. Emily Gunn and Elizabeth Breaux producing in the First Financial Studio. Your email is jim@inkstershow.com. We're spending a bit more time with Taylor Huckaby, Governor Bobby Jindal's former news media director. He now works in San Francisco with the Bay Area Rapid Transit District, and he has quite a story to tell about his days with Governor Jindal. He says there are fringe elements surrounding, insulating, and shrouding the current occupant of the governor's mansion. What do you mean by that, Taylor?
Well, there's the cornerstone of Bobby Jindal's re-election campaign was marshaling homeschooled kids, and a lot of people have been familiar with the homeschool movement recently because of the controversy with the Duggars, where he had the families where they're kind of it's called the Quiverful movement, where they spread the gospel through having lots and lots of kids. And so that is sort of the bedrock of the homeschooling movement. And whenever you have an ambitious of a plan, as Timmy Teeple did, his background comes from homeschool campaigning, and the plan is to knock on the people's doors who are most likely to vote or you're needing to get to vote at least 3 times. So you need to have basically an army of people to do that. And so whenever you're thinking about where you're going to get that many volunteers, if you're a conservative, the most obvious answer is homeschoolers. They have an almost limitless amount of time, and a lot of their parents are conservative activists. And so we bust in a lot of them from out of state to knock doors and work for the campaign.
Do you think Timmy Teeple has served the governor well?
I think that it comes to what is the purpose of the governor? I mean, if the purpose of the governor is to do right by Louisiana, then absolutely not. I think that, economic policy is to Bobby Jindal as foreign policy is to George W. Bush. I mean, how can you inherit a $900 million surplus and turn it into a $1.6 billion deficit? And it's just a nightmare scenario that recurs year after year after year. And there's a couple of places I think Timmy's steered the governor wrong, especially whenever he, after receiving a FOIA request for the governor's use of private email, he said the governor's only conducted business either written or over the phone, which is just the most laughable thing in the world. I mean, the Advocate just ran a story about Governor Jindal's obsession with the cell phone. So, I mean, I've been on those email chains. The Governor Jindal absolutely uses a private email, and as does anybody else on staff. You're instructed to, first day whenever you get there, make a private email. Don't ever email the state email addresses.
Why is there this obsession with insulating the governor from public scrutiny?
I don't know why there's such a spirit of secrecy or insulation from things. I don't know if it's just because they want to curate his image that carefully. I don't know if there's a racial element to it. I mean, whenever we were at our 2011 victory rally, we had Indian people in the background of the shot at the victory rally that were going to be behind him whenever he was announcing, and staff members were directed to remove them from the shot because of bad optics. And so there's this very carefully curated image of Bobby Jindal as this sort of, new member of the Duck Dynasty clan, and that's what they want that's what they want him to be and how they want him to look. And so I suppose if you're going to need to warp a Rhodes Scholar that far, it's going to take some serious handholding.
Tracy in Baton Rouge asks if the governor's exorcism on somebody else was ever discussed.
Well, everybody that I worked with, all of the inner staff, Timmy people, all of us, were very, very conservative, literal fundamentalist Christians. At least I was then. I'm no longer. But, if you ask them if they believe demons are real, they'd say yes. They believe demons are real. They think that evolution is suspect. They are for creationism in schools. And so, whenever you have those kinds of elements in there, it's nothing particularly strange that the governor might have performed an exorcism because everybody believes in demons, literal hell. It's a very, very religious place to work.
We'll return with Taylor Huckaby for a few more moments after we pause on the Louisiana Radio Network. This is Jim Inkster. Thank you for joining us, and hope you have a great evening, and we'll be back with us tomorrow. Taylor Huckaby is our last guest today, Governor Jindal's former news media director. We're wrapping it up with him. He's in San Francisco, where he works for BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit District, and he left the governor's office and has revealed that he was a gay person working for Governor Jindal, perhaps the only one, and you have teed off quite readily on his policy endeavors. What do you think of him as a man? Do you respect him?
I don't respect anybody that has, moved away from at least what I think was a really promising career. I don't think that I've never talked with Governor Jindal and felt like he was comfortable in the skin that he was in, not from a racial standpoint, but just from where he was, the image that he was portraying. So I don't particularly respect anybody who will campaign next to Rick Santorum, who says that, gay people shouldn't be around children. I don't respect people who are duplicitous and say that they don't use a private email whenever, in fact, they do, and they criticize others for doing so. The hypocrisy is just is stunning, and I don't respect anyone that would do that. I don't respect any of that.
All right. Well, Taylor Huckaby, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you sharing your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And we shall return tomorrow. Stay tuned.